Hello, welcome to part 4 of my Birthing with Confidence online introductory antenatal course. My name is Zana. In this 4th module, you'll hear some facts, ideas and suggestions around place of birth, including the impact that your chosen birthplace could have on birth safety for mother and baby. As with everything I present to you in this whole antenatal course, you are free to decide if you want to act on or change anything as a result of what you hear. If you feel more comfortable sticking to your original plans, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to change your mind about anything if you don't want to. It's completely up to you to choose what you'd like to do with the information. I'll also introduce the topic of breathing for self-calming. I've already mentioned it loads of times, so I think it's probably time we tried doing some. As usual, there will be opportunities for you to stop, consider how you're feeling, and add to your journal, so do keep it nearby. As ever, my aims for you throughout this whole course are that I want you to feel better about birth and feel more skilled and equipped and confident to deal with it. This whole course is free to access. If you find this module helpful or interesting, or if you just like that I'm doing this, please consider showing your appreciation by buying me a coffee, but only if you're able to. And if you would like to buy me a coffee, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/Zana Parker. Thank you so much. Do take your time as you go through this course. Be aware of your feelings and reactions and take breaks every time you need to. Use your personal journal to track how you're feeling, and please do email me if you have any questions or concerns, or if you'd like to book some one-to-one time with me. And if you'd like to email me, you can do so at info@birthingwithconfidence.co.uk. When I talk to new parents, I think most people who are worried about birth are probably worried to some extent about being in the safest place. And probably the next worry that comes up is about coping with pain, and we'll address that in a later module. First of all, regarding safety, a harsh fact is that safety can never be totally 100% guaranteed, and that includes life in general and considering how and where your baby is born. However, overall, giving birth in the UK is generally very safe. Unless you've made a conscious decision otherwise for your own reasons, it's important to attend your midwife appointments because some conditions, for example, can be detected early, and it's possible that serious harm can be prevented by this early detection. If you're unsure about anything anyone tells you, you can seek a second opinion. I also say trust your instincts. During pregnancy, you know your baby better than anyone else. You know what feels right for you and for your baby. You know what you're used to feeling when your baby moves. So if you're worried, please tell someone. If you worry that you won't feel heard, or if you think your mind will go blank, perhaps you can take someone with you who's able to speak out for you. It can also help to write down any questions or worries before you go and take your list with you. This slide and the next one contain some facts about the links between birthplace choice and safety according to the findings of a big UK study. This slide is for first-time mothers and the next slide is for people who've had a baby before. To clarify what's meant by safety in this context, with regard to the mother, safety here is about the likelihood of having different medical interventions in labour that could have been avoided with a different birthplace choice. What I mean by babies being safer in this context is that they're born healthy, without serious illness, serious injury or death caused by their birth experience. So these are the facts for first-time mothers. For a healthy, often called low-risk, first-time mother, a midwife-led standalone birth centre, so that's a birth centre separate from a hospital, is the safest place to plan to give birth even if you transfer to hospital during labour. For a healthy or low-risk first-time mother, a planned birth in an obstetric-led labour ward is the most likely to lead to medical interventions that could have been avoided if birth was planned to happen elsewhere, even if you end up transferring to labour ward during your labour from that other birth setting. Babies of both of these sets of mothers are statistically equally safe in each of these birth settings. And the numbers show that poor outcomes occurred in about 4 or 5 babies per 1,000 in both of these groups, which equates to about 0.5%. So that's what the statistics show for first-time healthy, that's low risk, mothers. So what about women who've had 1 or more babies before? For a healthy, that is low risk mother who's given birth before, home is the safest place to plan to give birth, even if you transfer to hospital during labour. For a healthy, low-risk mother who has given birth before, birth in an obstetric-led labour ward is the most likely to lead to medical interventions that could have been avoided if birth was planned to happen elsewhere. And babies of these mothers are roughly equally safe in all 4 birth settings, and we'll come to what those 4 birthplace settings are in a moment. You might already be aware of these facts, and of course if a woman or baby has any known condition or illness, then she may no longer count as low risk. Equally, if she's had a particularly difficult birth experience previously, she may not count as low risk. What I've just told you on this slide and the last one applies to low-risk people. In other words, healthy, pregnant people carrying 1 healthy baby who have no additional known potential complications. When I've shared this birthplace information in antenatal classes, I've been aware that some people have found it quite confronting. There are usually some people whose perception of birthplace safety is completely tipped upside down by the information I've just provided, and that can feel really unsettling or even quite alarming. It's possible that you feel that way, or maybe you're delighted to hear these facts. Whatever your reaction, I invite you now to pause and add whatever's coming up for you in your journal. If you're not sure where to begin or how to begin, you might like to consider the questions on the screen. So the questions are, how did it feel to read or hear those facts about birthplace safety? What emotions are you experiencing? If you're able to accept that those facts are true, because I know some people find that difficult to believe, and I will give you the links to the study they came from in a moment, then what conclusions or assumptions might you come to about why birth for healthy, low-risk people is more likely to go smoothly away from a hospital labour ward setting? Press pause now, and when you've taken time to consider and make a note of your feelings, emotions, thoughts or questions, then tap play again when you're ready to move on. I just mentioned that I'd give you the links to the study where I got the information from, just so you can satisfy yourself that I didn't make it up. These were the findings from the birthplace study. This was a large, well-conducted study in England, in the United Kingdom. It included about 65,000 women and babies who all satisfied low-risk criteria. It compared outcomes for first-time mums and mums who'd had babies before, and the babies of both these groups of mums, depending where they started their care in labour. If a transfer to hospital was needed, the results were given according to where that person was when they began their care in labour, so the results aren't skewed by transfers. 4 birthplace settings, I mentioned this earlier, were included, and these 4 settings were the woman's own home, in other words, having a home birth; obstetric units, often known as labour wards, where you're cared for by midwives and doctors; alongside midwifery units, which are birth centres inside hospitals where midwives look after people in labour. And the 4th place is freestanding midwifery units, which are birth centres separate from hospitals, where again care is given by midwives. There are no doctors present in the birth centre settings. Freestanding birth centres vary in distance from hospitals, and for example my local one just up the road from where I live is roughly 5 miles or so from our maternity hospital. Unfortunately, not all areas provide the option of birth centres, whether they're in a hospital or freestanding. I've added some links on this slide so that you can look up the study if you want to know more. And the most accessible one is the one that takes you to the 15-page summary document. So that's the first link I've provided there. There's an infographic, starts on page 11, that shows that all the findings in an easy to see at a glance kind of way. If you can't copy paste the links, you're welcome to email me and ask for them, but I will also put the links in the notes below this video. When you're deciding where to have your baby, you might like to consider a few different things, and I'm sure you've already got lots of ideas or reasons for choosing one place over another. So I'm just going to give you a few ideas that maybe you haven't thought of just yet. You're most likely to labour best where you feel most comfortable and safe. And this is because of birth hormones and the adrenaline effect, and we'll move on to talk more about that in a later module. Each setting will have pros and cons for you, which may not be the same as for other people. And what's important to you may not be the same as what's important to those around you, and that might include family, friends, and health professionals. Also, where you live, you might not have all 4 birth settings available, so whatever is available will still have pros and cons for you as an individual. Wherever you decide you'd like to have your baby, you probably don't need to decide right now. Although many people prefer to have a plan in place in advance, you can actually decide where you want to be once you're in labour and when you know how you feel. And of course, if you're planning a caesarean, then you will need to decide in advance. You can't do that in the moment. You can have a plan A and a plan B and even maybe a plan C if you want to. And you can change your mind. So when you're asked, when you first have your booking appointment where you might like to have your baby and you say, I don't know, local birth centre, if you want to change your mind and have a home birth or a hospital birth, you're perfectly at liberty to do so. It's your body, it's your baby, and therefore it's your choice. You may have been advised, for example, not to have a home birth, but actually, did you know you have the right to choose where to give birth? Now, having said that, it's not always that simple. If your local NHS trust has suspended their home birth service due to severe staff shortages, they may not have available midwives to come to you. Now, according to the organisation Birth Rights, who quote the Royal College of Midwives and the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, otherwise known as RCOG, staffing levels would have to be down by a pretty big 20% before a trust can suspend a service on the grounds of putting others at risk. While we're on the topic of your rights, it's also your right to decide whether you'd like to have a vaginal birth or a caesarean birth. Now, if you want to know more about your rights in connection with pregnancy, labour and birth, do look up Birth Rights. The link is on the screen. They're an excellent charitable organisation. You can find them at birthrights.org.uk. For some people, a planned birth in a labour ward, also called an obstetric-led unit, is the best place. And this might be the best place for you if you or your baby have a particular condition or illness. You might feel safer and more comfortable in a labour ward. If you don't like the idea of labouring there, you can do your own research and your own balancing of risks and benefits to help you decide what feels right for you. If you feel reassured by knowing there are doctors available, then perhaps labour ward feels like the right place for you. If you're fairly sure you'd like to have an epidural in labour to help reduce pain, then these are only given on labour ward. The same goes for remifentanil. In my local maternity hospital in Southampton, there's a birth pool in labour ward. I get the impression it could be used a bit more often, so do ask to use a pool if your hospital has one and if you like the idea. Some NHS trusts only offer labour ward or home birth. Not everyone has the option of a birth centre, so depending what you want, you may have to ask some questions and do some negotiating to get your needs met. As we've seen, where you plan to have your baby can make quite a difference to the way your labour unfolds, which is why I've included quite a bit about it in this module. This is a very personal decision. I want to remind you that just because the statistics show that for low-risk pregnancies you're far less likely to have avoidable medical intervention in labour if you plan to give birth away from a labour ward, it doesn't mean that you must or should take that decision. It's up to you to decide what feels right for you. Sometimes birthplace choice can feel really restricted, particularly if you've been told you're at increased risk. Unfortunately, many people are viewed as high or increased risk, when what that really means is only slightly higher risk than the next person who doesn't have that box ticked, and still more likely than not to have a healthy outcome. I've written a whole blog post about perspectives of risk, which you can find on my website if you'd like to read it. Go to birthingwithconfidence.co.uk/blog and look for the picture of the very hectic telegraph pole covered in wires with a ladder going up to it that you may or may not wish to walk underneath. If you'd like to pause the video here, please do so. If you'd like to add your thoughts, feelings, questions to your journal, do feel free to email me if there's anything you want to ask or discuss, and you can do that on info@birthingwithconfidence.co.uk. And if you'd like to pause for your journal, when you press play again, the next slide is going to be an introduction to some breathing and relaxation. So don't skip it. I'm going to see you there. There's been a lot of information on this slide. I've thrown a lot of facts at you and statistics and stuff to get your head around. So before we finish, I'd like to invite you to put everything down, settle yourself comfortably wherever you're sitting, unless you're driving a car, of course. If you're driving, don't do this. Do it when you're at home, somewhere safe. So if you're somewhere safe, just settle yourself comfortably and take your attention to your breathing just for a short time. So first of all, begin by taking a big sigh. So breathe in through your nose if you can, and then sigh the breath out of your mouth with a big audible puff. So in through the nose, and when you're ready, just blow the breath away. Breathe in again when you're ready, and blow your out breath away from you. Keep breathing slowly and calmly, and eventually you will find your own rhythm. Notice when you breathe out how your shoulders drop. Your arms and your hands feel looser, and your jaw softens. Now just take 3 more breaths in this way, in through your nose, out through your mouth if you can, really focusing on blowing the out breath away from you. That's great. Now, when you're ready, gently return your attention to your surroundings. And you might like to pause the video here and take some time to make notes in your journal about how that felt. So you may like to note or draw, scribble, whatever works for you. And if you can, you might like to track how you felt in mind and body before that short breathing experience, during, and how you feel now afterwards. So press pause here, add to your journal, and when you're ready, press play again. I hope you enjoyed that short focused breathing experience. We will return to it in more detail in a later module. For now, this is the end of Module 4, which has all been about birthplace choice and an introduction to focused breathing. My aims remain the same. I want you to feel better about birth and feel more skilled, equipped and confident to deal with it. If you'd like more information about me and what I do, go to my website, birthingwithconfidence.co.uk, and all my contact details are there as well. If you like what I'm doing, if you find it helpful, if you've enjoyed this module, it would be fantastic if you're able to buy me a coffee, please, at buymeacoffee.com/Zana Parker. That's my name, ZANAPARKER. If you're able to do that, thank you so much. I will see you in Module 5, and Module 5 is going to be all about birth hormones, the effect of adrenaline, and we're going to start thinking about making birth plans, for want of a better word for them, maybe with a slightly different slant on things to the one that you may be used to hearing or reading about. I look forward to seeing you in Module 5. Thank you very much.